If you ask people who was greatly influential in your life, you're going to commonly get things like my grandmother or my great grandmother, or I had a friend, or I had a pastor, I had a youth pastor, who from your past or the distant past, though not with you anymore, continues to speak into your life because of the way that they acted in Christian faith. That's what we're going to be discussing today.
Thank you for joining us again for this Passion Life podcast with myself, John Ensor, and my good friend, Mark Nicholson. Good to see you, Mark. Hey, today I want us to talk about some things that we have inherited from those who went before us. And I don't mean money per se. I mean something more valuable than gold itself, which is words of encouragement and models, things that we've learned from those who have gone before us. And I get this idea from the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. If you remember, it's a whole chapter listing all these people who lived and died by faith and how they can keep contributing to the next generation, even to us who are alive today, or even those who were alive when the writer of Hebrews was writing this. And it just makes for a great conversation about what we've learned and who we've learned it from. But the key verse, Mark, is from Hebrews 11:4. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous, God commending him by accepting his gifts. And here's the key line here. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. It was through his faith that he is speaking to us. It's the words and the actions that are generated by our faith in God that have a long tail to them, and they travel down and they have ongoing influence and impact, so that they speak to us, and what we say and do out of faith can impact others, even though we're gone from the scene. Pretty encouraging reality.
Yeah, it is an encouraging reality, and I don't know. I don't know what my legacy will be. You don't know what your legacy will be, but this is a guy who was one of 4 human beings on the planet. And he offered a sacrifice in faith that has reverberated through all the centuries, all the thousands of years. And now there are 8 billion people on the planet. And we still remember he's still speaking to us through what he in his heart offered to God.
Exactly. And then this is just one of many people who are mentioned and commended for their faith. By faith they did this, and by faith they went there, and by faith they did this, and by faith they suffered here. And these are all the words and the actions that faith in God generates.
You know, I'm just thinking off the cuff here. Most people, when they hear the name Abel or the brothers Cain and Abel, they're thinking about the fact that there was this murder. It's the first murder in recorded human history. Well, it's the first murder in unrecorded history either. It's and I wonder if that's if most people, what jumps into their mind immediately when they think about Abel is that his sacrifice was so pleasing to God because it was made in such a posture of faith. I mean, that's what God remembers about Abel, not that he was maliciously killed by his brother and was wronged by his brother, and his brother tried to cover it up. So it makes me wonder sometimes, John, how people remember history and how God remembers history. What's important to him.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. He's being commended specifically for doing something out of faith, not just suffering a violent death that God, did take vengeance on. But what he did by faith is to make a sacrifice, an act of worship, really.
Sure.
Is what it was.
Yep.
So the larger point here is that people who say and do things as the outworking of their faith continue to speak to us. So give us in your life someone who is still speaking to you by what they have said or done, written, proclaimed, experienced. Who is name me somebody in that category in your own life.
Yeah. Well, I knew you were going to ask me that question. So I ran upstairs to my bookshelf to pull off this one volume. And as is so often the case, the books that I like the most, I never retain a copy of because I always give them away to people and people don't give them to me back. And if I buy another copy, I'll probably give that one away too. So the books that mean the most to me, I never have opportunity to get my hand on them. But there was a book that was extraordinarily influential on me as a young missionary in China. And it was entitled Mountain Rain. It was written by a British missionary named James O. Fraser. Now, a lot of missionaries would know his name, but most people in life, even most Christians, wouldn't know the name James O. Fraser. But he was a missionary that went out from England and suffered greatly while he was in China. And he met with a lot of disappointment in his ministry. And he met with a lot of personal depression as he ministered in China. And then the Lord broke through and there were great things that happened. I'm going to come back to the story, but part of the reason James O. Fraser still speaks to me, as Abel still speaks to us, was because though he was a conflicted, everyday type of guy, he was an everyday man. He was nobody special, really.
Yeah.
And he suffered so greatly with depression. And while I was on the mission field in China, I suffered greatly with depression, clinical depression. And it can feel like something that's sidelining. Maybe some people feel like it should sideline people from ministry. But the point is his book of the way he walked in faith through his depression and the fact that later on, God gave him a bountiful harvest among the Li Su people of China, a minority group that lives way up into the mountains. That spoke to me. And it still speaks to me. I know that you've been to the Li Su people. You've been in that area of China. I lived in China for 10, 11 years, and I've never seen the Li Su people or their area.
Yeah, I have two responses to what you said. Number one, it is amazing that that James O. Fraser was someone that you got to know about and then needed yourself as you went to China and experienced some of the same things. We needed to find somebody that we could relate to. And
you can say he mentored me while I was in China.
Yeah. And depression is already such a deep and profound mystery for many of us to figure out what it is and how to deal with it, even through the lens of the Holy Spirit. It's a dark place to go through, and you've been through some of that, and the Lord's brought you out. And James O. Fraser, I mean, it's amazing he's not an everyday name, really, because in the history of missions, he probably had one of the most remarkable, successful mission enterprises in all of history.
It is true. Yep.
There are many people who went to the mission field and gave their lives and had no converts. They just laid down their life for the next generation that would come in. But I actually had an opportunity. This was in 2013. So this is 13 years ago. I was invited to go up and teach our 4 questions up to the Li Su people up in the high mountains that borders Burma. And I pulled out some pictures for you. So this first picture just shows you the terrain. These are steep, tall mountains with deep valleys with rivers down in at the base of them. Some of the most beautiful country in all of China, for sure. So this is where the Li Su people live. this next picture is my wife and I standing at one of the tops of these mountains here, looking down across the whole terrain there. And
Amazing.
I'm wearing a shirt. They presented this shirt to me and one to my wife. She's got it underneath her jacket there. This is the cultural shirt of the Lisu people. And I was honored to receive one when we got up there. So the next picture is a group of ladies with my wife, just enjoying a moment together during a lunch break, most likely. Just kind of give you a picture. They look Asian, but they don't look like Han Chinese.
Right.
So we're up there with the Lisu people. They don't speak Chinese.
That's right. They speak Lisu. They're a minority group within China, and they speak their own language, and they have their own culture and customs. Yep, there are lots of minority groups in China.
So when I was speaking to them, I was speaking in English, and then I had a translator speaking from English into Chinese, and then a Lisu speaker translating from Chinese into Lisu. So everything had to be short and simple and clear because you had to go through twice as much translation.
That's right. That's amazing.
That was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the high water mark of my visit there. So here's a picture of a house in the village where we stayed. It's a very typical, very plain cement block house built on the river, and pretty poor. And in fact, in the pastor that we stayed with, his mother lived with them. And in the next picture, here I am in the kitchen. This is the stove. It's an outdoor cement floor with some sticks, and we're burning coals. And the way you turn the heat up or you turn the heat down is you move the sticks in and out of the fire. Okay.
Yeah.
This is, they were just sitting with me, and I'm enjoying cooking over the fire with them. But that's how simple the Lisu people are living. Now, then you go into the main part of town, and this last picture shows this is the church building. And all of a sudden, it's a beautiful building with beautiful painted bright colors, a big red cross at the top, freshly painted. And in contrast to everything else, it just stands right out in the whole
everything
town.
else is drab and poor and kind of unkempt, but the church, it looks like, is where they really put their energies and that's where their value is.
That's right. You might as well have signed this picture James O. Fraser, because this is what he left on these early believers in his lifetime. He went there. He had to reduce the language to an alphabet, right?
Right.
Then he had to learn. He had to learn the language, create an alphabet, teach them how to read the alphabet, then translate the Bible into Lisu so they could read the Bible in their own language. And all of that hard work led to them seeing and wanting to live for the supremacy and the glory of Jesus Christ that is reflected in this building. So
and that's
kind of my personal visit to the Lisu people.
Something like 96 or 97% of the Lisu people are now Christians because of the work that James Fraser did at that time. And there were times, John, we saw that picture that you showed of the big jagged mountains. There were times when he sat on the precipice of one of those mountains, considering throwing himself off into the river gorge below and committing suicide because he was so depressed, because he wasn't. And look at the heritage and the way that the gospel continues to speak through his life and through the Lisu people today.
It's a glorious thing, and James O. Fraser could be in the extended version of Hebrews 11, or what some people call Acts 29. There's 28 chapters in Acts, so some people talk about, we could put this in Acts 29 because the church is still unfolding. So
that's right. Amazing.
That's a beautiful thing.
Well, John, James Fraser spoke so highly to us that we did the very thing that he did, which was recruit a team of people to pray for him every day while he was on the mission field. So we had a group of 24 people who had committed to praying for us every single day while we were on the mission field for this last 3 years that we were there. We went home after reading his book and recruited this team. And that was one of the profound impacts that he had on us, because we believe a lot of what we saw in China late in our ministry there really was wrought by the Lord through the prayers of the people that gave so much effort to that, praying for us.
Yeah.
So James O. Fraser still speaks to me. John, how about you? Do you have somebody who's still speaking to you?
Yeah, I thought about this. Last week, I attended a conference up in Knoxville, the Colson Center Conference. And it was a great reminder to me about how much Chuck Colson has influenced my life. You know, he was a pretty nasty guy. I mean, he was a very cutthroat politician, worked with Nixon and was called Nixon's hatchet man.
Wow. Yeah. And
then, you know, I was a freshman in college during Watergate. So old enough to really follow what was going on, and saw that he got arrested and went to prison. And then not long after that, reading a book called Born Again. Not very creative name, just Born Again. But right. I'm telling you that
by Chuck Colson.
By Chuck Colson, talking about his own conversion to Jesus Christ. And soon after, he wrote another book called Loving God. Again, a very simple theme, but very powerful book about living out the Christian life. So the first book was about his conversion, transformation, then more of his sanctification. And then he wrote a book in 1987 called Kingdoms in Conflict, which really helped me recognize that as we live out our personal faith, we have a public point of impact. We have cultural transformation. We have courage to go along with compassion to challenge the trends of our times. And he talked about the kingdoms in conflict, and he talked about the life issue. He talked about it from a historical perspective. His hero was William Wilberforce.
Oh,
so if he was on our podcast today and you asked him who is dead yet still speaking to you because of their faithfulness, he would have said it was William Wilberforce. And he was using Wilberforce as an example of how we in our time need to carry out and defend the innocent human beings who are having their rights stolen from them. So he was talking about the slave trade with Wilberforce, but today he would be talking about the rights of the unborn child.
That's right. Yeah, there's no question that if Wilberforce lived today, he would take on I feel sure he would take on abortion as the preeminent moral crisis of the day, as
Chuck Colson did in a lot of his writing. And
that's right.
And when I wrote a couple of books on living out the Christian life and having cultural impact and saving the unborn, I used Colson's quote of Wilberforce. Let me read it to you. This is one that continues to speak to me, especially as I've been in this work now for 35, close to 40 years. You can get worn out. But here he writes this. This is what Wilberforce wrote that impacted Colson, which has now impacted me. He said, "Never, never will we desist till we extinguish every trace of this bloody traffic, of which our posterity, looking back to the history of these enlightened times, will scarce believe that it has been suffered to exist so long, a disgrace and a dishonor to this country."
Wow.
And I think if there are two great sins that have afflicted our country and kept it from achieving the greatness that it can, it would have been slavery in the past and abortion today, both of which strip a group of human beings from their rights.
Exactly right.
They still speak to us.
Amazing. Well, John, why don't we take a break and we'll come back and talk about the ways that people in the past are still speaking through their faith even today.
Okay.
The U.S. accounts for only 3% of the abortions that happen in our world each year, leaving 97% of the crisis before us as a world missions challenge. Would you join us in serving where the need is greatest? PassionLife, rescuing the most vulnerable where abortion is most concentrated.
We've received a really overwhelming and wonderful response to this tiny baby fetal model that we've developed here in PassionLife. This fetal model is a medically accurate representation from the 9th week after conception. If you go to our website, we've got a way for you to not only send those tiny babies around the world, but find out a way that you can have some of those tiny babies come to you for your own use as well.
If you've been following this podcast for any amount of time, you know that we do a lot of work right now in both India and in China. And every country that we go to, we try to find people in the past that are making an influence in terms of the gospel in that country. So, Mark, India, who comes to mind who is gone, but is still speaking to us and to the church in India?
You know, I spend a lot of time thinking about India these days because India has taken over as the country in the world with the highest abortion rate of any other. And so that puts India right in the crosshairs of our organizational mission. And we target India to go there and work with the churches to bring that abortion rate down. And of course, you can't move around in India. You can't go, especially in West Bengal, the state where he lived and the state where I visit the most. I've just come back from my 13th trip to India with PassionLife. You can't move around in West Bengal very much. You can't talk about India, and certainly not missions history in India, without talking about William Carey, who was a missionary who went to India in the early 1800s. And I think it was in the 1820s. He did so many things for India. And the reason I specifically thought about William Carey, as we're talking about this verse from Hebrews 11, and Abel, whose by faith, he still speaks to us, even though now he's gone from this earth. William Carey still speaks in India. He continues to speak in India, and I think he's always going to speak in India, not just to the Christians, but to all the people of India. And almost everyone in India knows who William Carey was and why he came to the country and what he contributed to their country. Now, John, you can probably jump in with me, but William Carey translated the Bible into so many Indian languages. I mean, it was multiple Indian languages.
Yeah, he didn't translate the whole Bible into many languages, but he did translate it into 2 major languages completely.
Okay, right.
And then I think he translated the Psalms or one of the Gospels into something like 24 other different dialects.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine translating the Psalms into another language? I mean, and this guy did all that, you know. He worked with the legal system. He worked with individuals. He, started colleges that are still there. Serampore College, university is still operating in West Bengal today. But the specific thing that I was thinking about was that there is a law that is on the books in India today known as Carey's Edict. It is written as Carey's Edict, and it is remembered as Carey's Edict because this is a specific law that outlawed sati, which is the practice of burning widows on the funeral pyres of husbands who have passed away. So very traditional in those days to put the dead body of the husband on a funeral pyre, and the wife was expected culturally, as it was lit, to jump onto the pyre to show her her faithfulness to her husband and the heartbrokenness that she's going to experience in her loss. And if they didn't do it, they were pressured to do it. And if they didn't do it under pressure, many times they were thrown into the fire with their husband.
And they
just
had to take some drugs and other types of things that kind of dull their senses.
They
were
a barbaric.
Yeah. He also fought infanticide. It was very common in that time to throw
Yes, he
babies
did.
in the Ganges River.
In the Ganges.
And
That's right.
he took a strong stand against both of those while he kept the gospel central to his message there. So,
Yep.
yeah,
So I would say you have to characterize this as William Carey continues to speak in India, because it is now illegal to do that, specifically because of William Carey and Carey's edict, as far as sati goes, and of course killing infants in the Ganges, throwing them to the crocodiles.
In China, there is a similar testimony going on that is within the church, but way beyond the church into the culture at large. And this may be one of the few foreign names within the context of China that remains highly respected. And that is Matteo Ricci, R-I-C-C-I, Matteo Ricci.
Yeah.
He was a Jesuit Catholic missionary, and he's really the first person to go into China and begin to proclaim the gospel in a way that it stayed. There were some others that went earlier. There were some Nestorians that went in 1,000 years earlier, but all of their work was kind of wiped out and erased.
Right.
And then there were some others that went in, and their work didn't last, and it was erased. But Matteo Ricci was not only a theologian and a proclaimer of the gospel, but he was a scientist.
Yep.
He was a mathematician. He introduced the clock to the emperor in Peking, Beijing today. And that gave him favor, and he was able to stay there and influence many, many people and see the gospel take root there. And here's a picture of a plaque at the cemetery where he is buried. So in spite of all the Cultural Revolution and trying to erase all signs of foreign influence, they have kept this picture, this statue, or this monument, I should say,
Yep.
of Matteo Ricci, and honor him in this area. This is in Beijing, and it's at a place where other missionaries have also been buried. And so here's a picture of my wife and I. This is about a dozen years ago, where we visited his gravesite, and we saw all these other gravestones of all these other missionaries who laid their lives down to bring the gospel forward. So you might want to follow us in India, follow us in China, follow us around the world. Go to, PassionLife.org.
That's right.
Sign up for the text updates, and as we travel, you'll see what we're doing, and you'll be inspired in your own faith. Thanks for joining us today. God bless you.
Bye.